everyone, welcome to the Desolation Sounds Podcast. My name is Stephen Hook, and this is a podcast celebrating everything to do within the worlds of alternative music, be that rock, punk, metal, or extreme music. I'm already coughing. Coming up on this week's show, I'm fiddling around with the mic because my levels have gone really weird. I'm playing with volumes because people keep telling me I'm quiet, so if I'm really loud and up in your grill, I can't win, really. Coming up this week's show, we've got news coming out of Mastodon camp, as well as two new bands on the horizon, featuring members of, one consists of members of Judas Priest, Alice Cooper, Dio, that's sort of like trad metal sort of thing, and another one was just a little bit on the other side, featuring members of Napalm Death, Bujera, and Megadeth. There's also a little bit of news I missed last week regarding Parkway Drive at Bloodstock. There's new music from Periphery, and the album reviews for this week come from Austria's Insanity Alert and Russia's Somn. Really hope I pronounced that right. And the open mic this week is Bloody Kisses by Typo Negative to get your goth freak on. But yeah, as with every week, we're going to start off with the news. And the bit of news I missed from last week, Parkway Drive have been announced as the third headliner for Bloodstock. Bloodstock, of course, going from the 8th of August to the 11th. And there's been a lot of backlash to this because, for many different reasons, but the one I've seen a lot of is they're just not metal enough, or they're just not bloodstocky enough, and your other headlines are Sabaton and Scorpions, for fuck's sake, so easily Parkway are heavier than those two bands, like, without question. And it just strikes me as a bit bizarre that That's Not a Metal podcast, I've just listened to it. They raise a really good point that they just don't fit some kind of aesthetic that Bloodstock have built up over the years, and that's fucking rubbish. Because the latest Parkway album, Reverence, has so much more like trad metal thingling going on compared to like previous albums. With Aya, it was a bit on the nose, but Reverence, no, it's very much a Bloodstock kind of album. So y'all can fuck off. I'm drinking juice this week instead of tea, so hopefully it'll be less slurpy. But it will be clank because I have a metal straw. But for this week, Mastodon drummer Brand Daler says a new album is to be expected in 2020. In an interview with Kerrang, he says, "I think next year will be smarter than this year on our part. We need to let people miss us, maybe," which, pretty fair. It comes off the back of must be about a month ago now. Members of Mastodon teased a super heavy new song was due, and it's turned out that it was going to feature Scott Kelly from Neurosis, which is sort of a Mastodon tradition. I think he's been on pretty much every album, actually. He rears his beautiful little face somewhere. But the laws of time meant they couldn't finish it. They couldn't get the song finished in time before they went back on tour. So the song has been shelved. There's no new news considering or like referencing a new release date for the song. But I imagine if and when that eventually does get released, that'll be the start of the next tease within the eventual album cycle, touring, etc. So new Mastodon on the way for 2020, and that's always fun news. There's two new bands. Again, it's always two at a time, isn't it? So first of all, we've got a new Revenge, and it's a supergroup featuring Tim Ripper Owens, formerly of Judas Priest. You've got Kerry Kelly, formerly of I think these are all formerly Alice Cooper and Slasher Snakepit. You got Rudy Sarzo, who's worked with Dio, Ozzy Osbourne, and Whitesnake, and you've got James Kotak from Scorpions. They've all released. They've already got a new song out and a new album, or announced an album, I should say. The album's called Enemies and Lovers, and they've got a full music video for the song The Way, and it is very, very 80s hard rock, which, powerful of course, considering who's in it. Excuse me. It's complete with like those happy little keyboards you get in the background, and so much fucking cowbell. It's fantastic. So yeah, a new Revenge. Go check it out if that's sort of your thing. The other sort of band, or the other supergroup that's just been announced, is called Tronos, or Tronos. I'm gonna go with Tronos. It features Shane Embry from Napalm Death, Bujera, and literally 87 other bands because he is medically insane. You got Russ Russell, who is a producer who has worked with the likes of At the Gates and, again, Napalm Death. And you got Dirk Van Buren, who I really hope I pronounced that name right. He is the current drummer for Megadeth and has formerly worked with Soilwork. Similarly to A New Revenge, they've got a new album release. It's called Celestial Mechanics. That is out the 12th of April. And it's also scheduled to feature guest appearances from Billy Gold of Faith No More, Troy Sanders of Mastodon, and Dan Lilker from Nuclear Assault, previously of Anthrax, I believe, back in the day. As well as Dennis Snake Belanger. I'm going to go Belanger from Voivod, and Erica Knuckles from The Wonder Stuff. As well as that new album, they also have a single out called Birth Womb, and it's really quite spacey, quite groovy thrash metal, which is a weird way to describe something, but I'm sticking by it. So yeah, you got New Revenge with the album Enemies and Lovers, new song already out called The Way, 80s inspired keyboard rock. And you've got Tronos, which is more spacey, groovy, thrash sort of stuff. And they've got an album, Celestial Mechanics, with the lead single called Birth Room. Both are available on various video and news-based websites around the world. I'm sure you can find it. Apart from those two songs, the only other new music I seem to find this week, and I don't even know if I missed it from last week. I think it might have come out just on the Wednesday. Periphery have a new single out to promote the new album, Periphery for Hail Stan. It's out April 5th, the album. They already got a new song out. It's called Blood Eagle. And my fucking word, it's a heavy boy. It is a sumo wrestler of a song. A friend of mine played it at work, and we were both kind of taken aback because he's a really big fan of, I guess, the more melodic version of Periphery, where Spencer Stiletto does like the more clean vocals. It's a bit more, I don't really know how to describe it. You've got like the two ends of Periphery. You've got like more heavy stuff, which not quite Blood Eagle heavy, but yeah, a bit more like shouty stuff. And you've got the more like structurally there, more songy sort of music. I don't know what I'm saying, but yeah. And for him to hear this is like, it's a bit of a shock. He didn't like it at first, and he's grown into it. I immediately really enjoyed it, so I'm looking forward to that. I'm gonna make this, the first Periphery album I probably go into, because I've only really got like a greatest hits worth out of the previous three and the Clear EP. So yeah, well, no, previous 5, because they did a double album, didn't they? That whole Alpha and Omega shtick. But yeah, that's all the news from this week. It's, again, fairly quiet at the moment. I don't know why. I don't know where everyone's gone. But, oh well. We shall move directly on to album reviews then. We're going to start with Austria of All Places. The album is called 666 Pack, which already should give people an idea of what to expect. It's from the album Insanity Alert. It's their third album. They are a crossover thrash band, and this album features 21 songs in just under, I think, around the 33-minute mark, which this is not quite like a Dream Theater tribute album, but at the same time, it's not quite a grindcore album. There's still a surprising amount going on. It means to go on. There's just this eruption of noise that is just several hundreds of thousands of beer cans being open, and it's a fairly straightforward crossover instrumental open. That's Thirst Killer, and it goes into a lot of this album is made up of that hardcore influence thrash sound, and you've got songs that do it really well. So Thirst Killer goes in Body of the Christ as a Parasite, which is a fucking great song. You got Win Milli Vanilli, I Come, I Fuck Shit Up, I Leave. The very like groove heavy hooks, and like the punk just really shines through, and it bounces between that like really fast paced power chordy sections. And I don't really know how to describe them as someone who's not a guitar player, but the only way I can sort of describe it is like the little scaly bits, like bits that sounded awful. If you are a musician, never let your guitar sound like that. But yeah, the little like off note sort of stuff after the power chords, it's probably got a word. They're not quite hammer-ons. They're a bit after hammer-on or pull off. Not anything like that. They're a thing. Listen to the album, you fucking find out what I'm on about. And something that really hit me, especially on Body of the Crisis Parasite is the vocalist, which is legit heavy Kevy. Fucking great. He's Dutch as well, so you know he's good fun. He hits a vocal line in time with the snare beat or snare hit, and I don't know if it's just me, but I find it really, really satisfying. Just the do 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 do. Again, don't make your outbound sound like that. And he hits a different word in the vocal line to go with that beat, and yeah, I really, really enjoyed that. So, like I said, you've got a lot of the like hardcore-y, thrashy sounding stuff, and you've also got time where they do kind of slow it down a bit so they can be a bit more groovy. So you've got All Motion No Brain, A Skull Crushing Good Time. It's got really like slow paced swagger about them. Still, we're not quite in doom metal territory, but you know, you've got times just like the slow windmill, the slow head bob kind of deal, you know. And sitting amongst all that, where you've got like your very fast paced windmill, crossover thrash, a little bit slow mo down, swaggery groove metal parts. You've got some moments in this album that are complete fucking insanity. This album, it's rare. This album, because it's an album that doesn't like take itself too seriously, and it's fun. It's so much fun. It's a party album. It's the sort of thing where you put on. I feel like I'm doing it a disservice by like analysing it and being really critiquey about it, because it's a sort of album where you just have one in the background and just have fun too. You've got Saturday Grind Fever, which is a parody of the Bee Gees. You've got Stop Slammer Time, which is obviously MC Hammer. The Ballad of Slayer is that really, really like famous riff from like of Rain and Blood that just goes with "You're Dead" at the end. It's 7 seconds long. 7 seconds? 8 seconds? Where's it gone? 5 seconds. Fuck me. That's all it is. Just "You're dead," and that's it. And then you've got 8-Bit Brutality, which is a 7-second song, and it is a thrash metal riff on like a chiptune synthesizer with heavy Kevy, still not over that, just barking over the top. You know, they're just the lads drinking beer, having a good time, and there's nothing wrong with that. I wish I could go off and have a good time, but we all can't have nice things now, can we? So yeah, it's an album I found to. It's not to be taken seriously. There is kind of an outlier on this album, which I find super, super interesting. And I had it on while I was taking a shower, and I had to physically like pop my head up from underwater because it was just really, really took me by surprise. It's a song called One Eye is King in the Land of the Blind. It's a lot slower. It's way more Iron Maiden-y, particularly in the vocals, which for someone who's done like the like barky punk rock kind of thing throughout the album, to go a little bit more high pitch, but a lot cleaner. And you've got guitar harmonies that follow along with the vocals in the same way the drums did in Body of the Christ. And yeah, the outgoing chorus has Kevy, sorry man. It's super clean. Between him and the other members of the band, they add like this vocal harmony layering. And at some point, I thought it was going to be more like power metal or folk metal. And it might just be me. It's a little experiment they just threw in there, or just a chance for them to. I don't want to say serious song because that again disservices this album, but yeah, I just felt like it was a really cool little break in the album where they could flex what they can and can't do. So I'm intrigued to find out if anyone else picked up that, or I'm just talking absolute bollocks. Find out if you're a fan of this album. I think you will be, because again, it's just rock music to have fun to. Akin to Municipal Waste. That's what like crossover. I think they're a little bit more. No, I'd say they're on par, like the more thrashy side of crossover. Stormtroopers of Death, if you want to go OG. And I've also compared them to The Hell, which is a British hardcore punk metalcore band. And I'm not saying they sound like Insanity Alert at all, but what I'm more going for is I've always wondered if you can class The Hell as a comedy band in the same vein as like Tenacious D or Steel Panther, because they don't take themselves too seriously. They have a lot of like jokes, and their lyrical content is not like, you know, power metal where they're singing about kings and dragons or shit. They just go off, swear and shout and scream, and then fuck off again. But that combination of like what's traditionally like quite serious music, so the heavier end of, in the house case, metalcore, with their like more comedic and less serious vocals. If you like that juxtaposition where it is serious music and really like laid back comical lyrics, that's sort of why I've compared them to the Hell, because it is, whereas obviously Insanity Alert do it with thrash, the Hell do it with metalcore, but those sort of things, a serious, quote unquote serious genre traditionally with more laid back vocals. So yeah, Municipal Waste, Storm Through Chest, and I'm pretty sure I did not say what I was supposed to say, but Municipal Waste, Stormtroopers of Death. In terms of musically and lyrically, I'll go more with the Hell for 666 Pack by Insanity Alert. One day, I will fully utilize the use of my tongue and be able to speak basic English, whilst also drinking lemon juice. Cool. Moving on now to Russia, obviously. The album is called The All Devouring, which sounds absolutely metal as fuck. And the band is called Somn. S-M-O... No, that's wrong. S-O-M-N. Fucking hell. It is a debut album from the Russian post-black metal album. My hat fell down. I'm curious to find out where the line between a band just full of other musicians and a supergroup is, because Somn is made up of members of Show Me a Dinosaur, Turner, Pwill, and Austrian, which are all like prominent bands in the burgeoning St. Petersburg post-metal, post-black metal scene. And I've heard Show Me a Dinosaur and Turner before, and they're both very, very good bands. So to me, it's a very low-key supergroup, because it is made... I'll happily say I can't speak for Pwill or Austrian, but for Turner and Show Me the Dinosaur, it kind of strikes me more like a really low-key supergroup, because it is all around that hemisphere of that St. Petersburg metal scene I was talking about before. But either way, it's a collection of guys from those various different bands. And for black metal, post-black metal at the moment, we are in a weird phase where there's a lot of bands doing it, but not everyone is doing it well. And I concede that this might not sound like the most positive review to start with. Don't worry, it does get better, but I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent. I will come back, I promise. If you compared it to semi-recent musical... what's the word I'm thinking of? Not a gimmick, that's rude. We'll go with phases, because I can't think of the proper word I want to use. When you look at like musical phases, like gent or nu metal, like, compared to them, you've already got the foundations of post-black metal made. You've got Death Heaven, you've got Alcest, you've got Bossa de Naga. And similarly for gent, you had Periphery, Animals as Leaders and Textures, whereas nu metal, you had Korn, Limp Bizkit and Deftones. You've got, like, the similarities there for a burgeoning new scene are there. And then after the foundation has been made, you get a mad rush of a bunch of new bands trying to do this new cool thing. And the only ones that survive are either the bands who do expand out of that genre's shackles and do something interesting with it, like how Tesseract added post-rock to gent, Nimic added industrial metal, and The Algorithm added dubstep. And for nu metal, Slipknot added groove, as did Soulfly, and then brought in some of those themes and musicianship from Sepultura to the nu metal sound, and Evanescence added a huge goth rock influence to it as well. You get those sort of bands who they've taken what is new and fresh and interesting, and then expanded it more to become even fresher, even newer, and even more interesting. So you've got that side of things, or you've got the side of things where bands will stick to the core principles of that scene or of that genre and just do it really, really well. So for gent, I've looked at Veil of Maya, Born of Osiris, and Monument. And for new metal, I've looked at Disturbed, Papa Roach, and Linkin Park. None of those bands really expanded outside the realms of their particular genre, but particularly for like the new metal bands, they just did it really, really well and made something iconic. So they started off with like a quote unquote one hit wonder, then everyone went in and realized that the entire album was one hit wonders, which makes a completely fucking great album. You know what I mean? Probably not, but here we go. To bring it back to the comparing it to post black metal, this is like the sort of thing we are now. We've got a lot of bands coming through who are doing things differently. So you've got Mare adding more like folksy elements to it. Oathbreaker, who've got that like history of Brit using crust punk, and then people who are just doing things really, really well. You've got Mull and you've got Harakiri for the Sky. They haven't expanded outside the genre brackets much, but what they do is really, really fucking good. So that integrates with Somn. Where does that leave them? Well, there's nothing insanely new from this album. I definitely think this is more a case of they are sticking to the roots and sticking to common characteristics of the genre. I don't know why I really struggle to say that. I want to say carrots. Musically, this is everything you would ever expect from an album that's been labelled as a post-black metal album for a post-black metal band. But by no means is this a post-black metal album to get lost in the mix and be amongst like... who can I make fun of today? Incubus, or... I don't know how Incubus made it big. Oh, what was the one that used to get made fun of? Either way, they're not going to get lost in the mix of things. This is as no thrills as it is to post-black metal in terms of expanding it out. What it does in terms of like the actual genre itself, they do very, very well. And I think as well, this no thrills approach works really well because it just barrages the listener with really, really strong soundscapes with some really, really good drum work and some really, really good vocal work, which I'll speak more about the vocals in a little bit. For me, they've kind of taken more of a Mull approach in that even when it's in the quote-unquote quieter sections, I think I only found one example where this like goes against it, but most of the time they don't have just like one guitarist like heavily echoed or heavily reverb or just going about on his own. For the quiet bits, you will have that level of guitars like but you still got everyone else in the background doing their own little part to like really bring in that sound. And like I said, even when those moments exist where it's just the guitarist having a little to do by himself, they don't make up the whole song. They're very, very short segments, like a minute long at most, and they easily set up for the next part of the song. Tempest is undoubtedly the best part of this album, and it's one of the few examples I could find where it is just him isolated with a guitar, and then it just builds and builds and builds into this huge like next climax part. But with Tempest, it's so fucking good. The atmosphere of the song, the feeling of dread and stress made by that lead guitar as everyone else is going ham as like a traditional like black metal album. Whereas the guitarist, I'm not quite sure who the lead is. It's between... I'm going to butcher some Russian names, so get ready, lads. Artem Selyugin and Oleg Salnikov. I think I did alright with that, actually. Fuck you guys. I'm not quite sure who the lead guitarist is, but between them, adding that like juxtaposition between their two different playing really, really just fucking grinds at you in a good way. Grind was the wrong word. It gets to you. Yeah, we'll go with that. There's a stop-start riff around the 2-minute 40 mark where even like the backing atmospherics, if you will, the backing effects stop. So you're left with this like just isolated bits of music where it's just like kind of like an OG punk kind of riff, like and you've got nothing going on in the background. So for the split seconds, you do have just about less than a second of silence, and then when everything just goes, it's just that those key parts of silence do more damage than like most black metal bands will get in like their lead riff. And overall, it is a song that makes you, that when you listen to it, you will contemplate every life decision you have ever made. And who doesn't want that? Because I know I've made some great decisions. In the grand scheme of things, like I said, it is very paint by numbers post-black metal. It is very good at what it does, but it's, like I said, it's not going outside of what people already know from the genre. I think one thing that will set it apart is the vocalist, whom I believe is also the bassist. There we go. Mikhail Korochkin. I think I'm doing alright. I know I talked about the drummer before, but I really don't want to try his last name. Yeah. Drummer, you've done a spectacularly good job, but I don't want to butcher your name the same way I've done the other friends, so I'm really sorry. To me, Korochkin's vocals are more on par with a grind vocalist. The one that came to my mind the most was a gentleman called Duncan Wilkins. He is a lead singer of a band called Fuckpig, who I'll admit, I haven't listened to that much. But he also was the lead vocalist in another Shane Embury supergroup called Born to Murder the World, which is like a death metal grindcore sort of album, which is really, really good. Do go check that out. And that's where I've kind of got the comparison. It's a bit more snarly, I guess. Whereas I feel like black metal vocalists, they get some that kind of go to more grunty death metal, low end sort of stuff, the high end shrieks, all that weird like gurning vocal. I think, like I said, I think this is more on par with like a grind-esque vocalist, but you know, that was just me. There's definitely enough here for people to enjoy. If you are a fan of the post-rock metal scene in general, I think you really, really go in for this. But as it stands at the moment, as much as I did really enjoy the All Devouring, I think there is still a danger that there's a chance they might get lost in the mix as they go down the line. Like, fair as fuck, there's bands who, like all those like bands I mentioned earlier, they will stay in the remnants of the genre and still be like household name bands because of how good each band is and how good each album is. And fair fuck, Somn could do the exact same thing. They could stay within the realms of post-black metal and just do it really, really good every single time. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened because, like I said, for a debut album, I know they've all got like history with other bands, but as a debut album, this is very, very good. And the fact it's called the All Devouring is so fucking metal. But there is also a difficulty that they can get kind of lost in the post-black metal mix. Because at the moment, I feel like if you put this, and I've talked about black metal before, I am a more casual listener of the genre. For me, if you, without listening to it too much, obviously I think I could do it now maybe, but you line it up with a bunch of other post-black metal bands, oh god, post-black metal become really difficult to say, it would become quite difficult to differentiate. That's just my take on it. I would love to hear if anyone is more of an expert and like goes into this sort of thing more often. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are in terms of differentiating it. This has got a lot of good feedback online, so it makes me more hopeful that they're not going to get like lost in the mix. Because if they can do this on the first album, imagine what like 2 or even that illustrious third album is going to sound like. Either if they like stick to what they know or try and branch out, I'm hopeful that these guys are going to become really, really good and really, really prominent, and they deserve it. And I hope as well, like I said, this burgeoning like St. Petersburg metal scene, I really hope that people start becoming more aware of that because there's a lot of good music coming out of that area of the world at the moment. So if you are, like I said, I've listened to Show Me a Dinosaur and Turn Out before. If you have heard them before, I think you're really going for this. I know Turn Out doesn't have vocals, so that might be a bit different for you. I know there's some people who just prefer this style of music without the vocals, which is fair enough. I think as well, I've compared them to Mole earlier with their approach to like heavy, quieter parts. So I think, yeah, if you were a fan of Mole, the album last year, you're going for this. And also, if you're really a fan of So Hideous, I was kind of comparing them to So Hideous and Harikiri for the Sky. Harikiri tend to use a bit more synth and a bit more like programming in it, whereas I think So Hideous are a little bit more straightforward, akin to Mole. So yeah, that's why I think more so Hideous. So yeah, Mole, Show Me a Dinosaur, or Turner, So Hideous. If you like any of them, go in for the All Devouring by Somn out of Russia. And I really hope I've done that album a good service, because I did really enjoy it. But if nothing else, even if you are a casual fan of post-black like me, definitely go in for Tempest. It's a very, very good song. Now, I'm going to get myself a little bevy, because coming up next is this week's open mic album, and it is Bloody Kisses by Typo Negative. Because how else would you celebrate Valentine's Day without listening to a bunch of goth brood? So, Bloody Kisses was the third album from the Brooklyn-based band. They specialise... They get fronted as a gothic metal band, and my listenings to Bloody Kisses and just the vague knowledge I have of Typo Negative, they are not just a straightforward gothic metal band. There's a lot of crossover thrash in there as well. And so Bloody Kisses, for like I said, album number 3, it follows on from Slow Deep Hard in 1991. The Origin of the Feces, which came out in 92, which was the original Goatsy album. Yeah, Bloody Kisses in 93. And at this point, they were made up of lead singer Peter Steele, guitarist Kenny Hickey, keyboardist Josh Silver, and drummer Sal Abruscato, who would make this his last Typo Negative album before going on to join Life of Agony, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. So my history with Typo Negative is such. So around, I think it must have been around 2008, when I was about 14 years old, I discovered the Roadrunner United album, which, for anyone who is unaware of what that is, Roadrunner, the like metal record label, who very, very prominent, even now still, they celebrated 25 years of service, basically. And to celebrate this, they got a collection of artists divided up and made 4 team captains. And they were, let's see if I can remember them all. You had Rob Flynn from Machine Head, Matt Heafy from Trivium, who, as I was going back and like doing a bit more digging about this album, Matt Heafy was fucking 19 when he made the Roadrunner United album, and was working with some just incredible names. I just jammy little bastard. So yeah, Rob Flynn from Machine Head, Matt Heafy from Trivium. You had Joey Jordison then of Slipknot. He'd also worked in Murder Dolls, as well as Dino Cazares of Fear Factory. So the idea was each team captain would write and record a song with an engineer. I can't remember the 4 engineers that were assigned to the album. And yeah, bring in a collection of artists from various different Roadrunner bands. And it eventually made an album, and eventually made a DVD. And the whole thing was fucking incredible. And it was a hugely important album for me, because I know I said before where Manowar were the first band to really get me into like niche ends of metal. The various styles and what's going on in this album completely changed how I listen to music and what I listen to. There's, in Metal Hammer magazine, there's always a section where they interview a musician, and one of the questions they get asked is, if a kid walked up to you and asked you what was heavy metal, what would you give them? And usually they get given like an Iron Maiden or a Kiss album, something like that. I would honestly give them the Roadrunner United album, because with metal being so expansive now, there's so many different genres and subgenres, and I feel like just me talking on this show, and even by my own admissions, I'm a huge genre Nazi, so everything's got to have like a place and be filed away somewhere. When I do the Puppy album next week, I'm going to have an awful tongue because it doesn't really fit anyone. It's going to be insane. Either way, Roadrunner United album introduced me to so many different types of music and so many different types of heavy metal music. So yeah, really, really important to me. And to come back to Typo, there's a song on it called Enemy of the State. And it's comprised of Peter Steele from Typo on vocals and on keyboards. You've got Steve Holt from 36 Creativists on guitars. Josh Silver from Typo also on keyboards. Dave Pybus then of Cradle of Filth on bass. And Joey Jordison, team captain, on drums. And personally, this was one of the weaker songs for me because being 14, 15, I want everything to be fast and explosive and energetic. So I was like already kind of into punk rock at that point. And this combined with the Mikkel Ackerfeld song, which I can't remember what's called off the top of my head. It was just, they were slow, they were dark, gloomy. It just wasn't for me. And then, so bearing in mind, the Roadrunner United album came out in 2005. I listened to it around about 2008, 2009. And eventually I found out there was a DVD, which was essentially a greatest hits of Roadrunner live. So they did songs from the United album. On the night they also covered Dayside, Fear Factory, Killswitch Engage, Trivium, Annihilator, King Diamond, and Brian Fair from Shadows 4 came on and do a song and then probably fell off the stage because he was absolutely pissed as a fart. It was all great fun. And one of the songs that they covered was Black Number 1, the I would say archetypal Typo song. So you had Vilvaio, then of him, or Vilvalo, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce his last name, Vilvaio on vocals from him, Andreas Kisser from Sepultura on lead guitar, Dino from Fear Factory and Rhythm, Nadia Poulin from, I really hope I pronounced that right, because I put a lot of emphasis on the P. Nadia from Cold Chamber on bass, Joey on drums, and then on keyboards was Rob Caggiano of Anthrax and Volbeat. Well, then Anthrax, now Volbeat, I should say. And I was completely fucking leveled by this song. I thought it was the doomiest, scariest shit. Bear in mind, this live show had Glenn Benton from Dayside do, I think it was Dead by Dawn, and he had this big, like, I don't know how to describe it. It was just this war armor featuring like a leather mask that covered his face, and even the guys on the, because there's a little documentary goes to the album, like they came out and saw it and they fucking shit themselves because this is a man who's got a cross burned into his forehead and said when he hits 40 he's going to kill himself because what's the point? And that is not the most leveling part of this album. It's easily this performance of Black Number 1. And a lot of it was down to Vil's execution, because as much as I don't know if he's done anything since leaving or since him broke up, but Vil Valo is a fucking phenomenal vocalist. But the first thing I wanted to do was go out and find the actual song. And so from there, I found the track list to Best of Typo Negative, which is a 2006 compilation album. And so I just thought, I'll just get the song separately because I like it when all the album artwork all links up and all this sort of shit instead of having to reorganize. And so doing that, I ended up finding a full 11-minute version of Black Number 1, which is the album version. And I listened to songs from the greatest hits, or songs that would go into the greatest hits, and I've completely fell in love with just those songs for whatever reason. I think because of my youth or whatever, I just never really went into them properly. And I never quite understood why so many people went so gung-ho over Typo Negative until 2010, when Peter Steele unfortunately passed away. And literally on the internet for about 2 or 3 days after his passing, no one could talk about anything else apart from how good and how influential Peter Steele and Typo Negative was. So there was always a sense I wanted to go back and try and investigate for myself, but for whatever reason, I just never really did it. So I figured this like open mic sort of thing is a really good way for me to go back and listen to old classic albums for the very first time, as well as reintegrate myself with albums that kind of brought me to where I am now. So hence why we're here with Bloody Kisses, stuck it on, and I like to listen to my albums quite a lot connected to Bluetooth speakers. So with me working shift work, my housemates doing 9 to 5, they go away, I stay at home, I listen to music on the Bluetooth speakers, sorry. And I'm really glad they weren't home, because I did not know this album starts with a woman moaning. That'll teach me good to maybe for a first listen to an album, maybe on the old headphones, or just do a bit of research, or know what I'm getting into. Any of these things really, because yeah, I had to. I'm a very bashful man, I guess you could say. So I just sort of skimped over that for the first time I listened to it, because yeah, kind of took by surprise. So from there it goes into Christian Woman, which is another one of like the big typo songs. And in it, Peter Steele has got such a dark and such a romantic voice. It kind of strikes me as, I've realised now, I've got Vili Vio spelled with an I now, whereas before it was spelled with an L. So I might be calling him Valo before. It's probably not right. The bloke from him. Peter Steele's voice is kind of like a meeting between Vili from him and Till Lindemann from Rammstein. That sort of really dark, broody, but really over pronunciation of lyrics and words. And the haunting like vocal harmony, over the top of the choruses, it just sets the mood so well and so early on to this album. This is track 2. Admittedly, it's 9 minutes long, but that's the mood that you've got for the rest of the album. And, you know, as a man who likes to be sad a lot, it was fine by me. The second part of the song, because I think the song Christian Woman is divided into like 3 parts. The second part, Steele sounds a lot more delicate, especially alongside quite a simple drum beat and an acoustic guitar. He sounds a lot bit more, yes. A lot more reserved and just, like I said, very sensitive and very delicate. And then I've just described the final part as quintessentially 90s, because for me the guitar sound sits right up there with the likes of Zakk Wylde and Dimebag Darrell. And I don't know what it is, again, not a guitarist, so I couldn't really put it on, but it's just tuning and the effects on the guitar and whatever, it just sounds, it is a 90s metal sounding guitar, and it is great. And for me, although this isn't the typo negative song, for me it's Black Number 1, which I'll get to in just a sec, but although this isn't the one typo song that I immediately jump to think of, it describes everything you need to know about Typo Negative as a band. There are religious jibes and religious anecdotes throughout the entire thing. It's a haunting pairing between Pete Steele's vocal work and the synth in the background. It is all weaponized eyeliner because it's so fucking goth, and there is so much fucking sex on this album. It is unreal. I read through the lyrics to Christian Woman at one point, and it got steamy. It did get steamy. So after Christian Woman, you go into the song for me, and the song that really, really, really got me noticing Typo Negative. Black Number 1, Lit Mascara, and just the intro where it's that that really slow, really rhythmic, almost, I think it's like quite a muted bass sound. I was completely mesmerized when I was watching that Roadrunner United album version and watching Nadia just play it. I was just transfixed by it all. And like the like kind of tinny synths in the background feel like they come straight out of some B horror from the 70s, and that's an absolute great thing. Just FYI, in the grand scheme of things, when you compare it to everything else on the album, it sounds so fucking, it fits it just fits so well. And then you've got Steele's really low end, really precise vocal delivery. And when he says milk white neck, just even now kind of gives me little shivers up and down my spine. It just on headphones, he is just there. He is all up in you saying milk white neck, and it is just great and terrifying in equal measures. Eventually, the whole song, it just all explodes, and you realize Steele is not just the low end Danzig-esque vocalist. He can absolutely nail the more abrasive stuff as well. And the album's crossover side of it starts to like peek its way through, and he does like a little trade-off with guitarist Kenny Hickey, and it like goes into the chorus where you've got like Hickey singing the lead, and it sounds really, really good to go from. I know I just said what Steele can do those like rougher edge things, but the trade-off between the vocal style between that low end clean and this like not quite high end, but more like we could all reach those notes instead of. Not many people can hit the low notes like Peter Steele could, I don't think. But yeah, that trade-off was fucking great. The whole song is in itself about Steele's narcissistic girlfriend, which is like I was saying last week about like King 810 and Bring Me Horizon. There's like if you want to sing a song about like an album about something, you've got so many things to work around, especially like love and death and whatever. It is really terrifying that on the basis of that, like it's a song about love. There's been thousands, millions of songs about love. Why is this one different? There's a line in it, loving you is like loving the dead. It was like fucking the dead. That is a really off-kilter way of singing about love and relationships, which not many people do. And imagine being that girl and hearing that line. Oofed. The rest of the song continues in the structure of adding a crunch and a layer of aggression to the gothic metal. Traditionally, a genre that's a bit more subdued and a lot more atmospheric, and which I'll go into a little more detail in a bit. But yeah, it was. I imagine for the time, because obviously this was '93. This album came out, so it's just on the back of the '70s and '80s like gothic boom, I guess. And yeah, you've got like what you think you know about gothic metal, then this comes in, it just completely changes everything. Having said that, if you want to go any further with the crossover side of things, you need to look no further than Kill All White People, which is a great song for giant white dudes to sing about. It is it's a song with a doomy center, a doomy core, but with a lo-fi hardcore start and finish. And this continues the juxtaposition between gothic music and hardcore music. It's like the Joy Divisions, the Cures, the Hymns, the Bauhaus bands of the world versus things like Madball, Biohazard, Suicidal Tendencies, like 80s hardcore, 80s New York hardcore boom, which I'm pretty sure Suicidal Tendencies aren't New York, and I think I might have just made a very big faux pas, but never mind. Moving on to, like, again, it goes the other way again. Set Me On Fire is musically, it sounds like a 60s, like, free love, psychedelia song. Everything's cool and red, yeah, and I promise I'll never do that again. But then, it's got this, like, dark, gothic ambience to it, and with a set of lyrics to match, because as much as it is, like, free spirit, do, the lyrics are Set Me On Fire, which, you know, probably not the best. Then it goes into, from there, it eventually leads into We Hate Everyone, which is the next song for this, like, Steele Hickey trade-off. And it really is, like, the tale of two genres. You've got the conflicting vocal styles for conflicting genres, the Peter Steele goth and the Kenny Hickey thrash. And all the while, it still remains punk as fuck. And it's just got this, like, banging vocal of we don't care what you do. The It's similar to how Killer White People is, where it is the if this were a donut, the doom metal would be the jam, and the baked good part, the cake, if you will, would be this hardcore crossover punk. You are here for top quality metaphors here. And during this segment where it's the donutty crossover thrash part, Abruscato, I know it's going to fuck his name up. Abruscato's drumming sounds fucking spectacular. Really, really dirty double kick bass. In the song previously, like Killer White People, it's full on like D-beat sounding at times. And as much as I've gone on about like the gothicness, it is nothing compared to Bloody Kisses, A Death in the Family. It literally sounds like the soundtrack to some kind of funeral procession, and it kind of is. Like, it's an 11-minute mournful opus about the loss of Peter Steele's cat. His cat died. He loved that cat, and this is a song he wrote about it. And at that point, I kind of got why so many people loved Peter Steele, because as much as Typo Negative love to have those little jokes, and they've got a very crass, very dark sense of humor, he can at times, like, he wrote an 11-minute song about his cat dying. Like, bet who else could do that? And it's not just that, the song is fucking great, you know. And as I was getting further along the album, and as I was like going into it a bit more critically, I'm sure that's a word, you do get the sense of like why this album and this band are known for how they are, because they are just the best of what they do. And from Bloody Kisses, it eventually leads into Too Late, Too Late Frozen, which I'm not quite sure why there's a colon. I don't know how you separate a colon when you're talking about it. I know you had to do it in like written down, but do you leave a gap, or you know? Too Late Frozen is the closest the album gets to a full thrash gothic crossover. Whereas before it has to have a thrash part, let's have a gothic part, let's have a thrash part. There's a lot more a lot more mixture. So you've got up-tempo riffs, you've got like more shouty gang sections in the chorus, and then you've got like it. Compare that to like the cowl that you get throughout the song as well, and there's like a really spacey vocal effect on the opening verses. So I think, yeah, as much as they get labeled as a gothic metal band that has a crossover thrash influence, I think this is the song where you can say they sort of really do blend those styles of music together. And then the ending song of Can't Lose You is a very sitar heavy ender, and it's a beautiful way to end the album. It is easily the most delicate moment on the entire album. I know what I said about his vocal line in Christian Woman earlier, but this is just ornate glasswork in the grand scheme of things. Steele's crooning going all the way through the melancholia, and it starts to feel like you're just in the middle of a trip based on like the instrumentation and like the chanting. There's a shop in Lincoln called Salamander, which is, I don't know how to describe it. I think every city has one. It is the shop that sells henna, those like flags that white girls like to put on their uni dorms. That's got like, all the different tie-dye colours and pagan markings on it. They have no idea what it means. And it's just, you can smell it from a mile away because all they do is just burn incense. That kind of shop, you know what I mean? Like I said, every city's got one, and this is a song that would play there all the time because it's just got that right kind of vibe to it. And as I was saying before, this did so much to gothic music, and it added a whole new edge and a whole new what's the word? There's danger to the genre after it had that like 70s 80s boom, but it just fell off the earth a bit. and now it's this band from Brooklyn has completely revived it. Bloody Kisses would end up becoming the first album released on Roadrunner Records to achieve gold and platinum certification. That's how good this became. And following on from Bloody Kisses, as I said before, Sal Abruscato decided to leave Typo shortly after the album was released. He went on to join a New York alt metal band, Life of Agony, of which the band's still going. Abruscato isn't with the band anymore. Get onto that in a bit. The rest of the band would enlist, Johnny Kelly, who was the band's former drum tech, he would replace Abruscato. And between Kelly, Steele, Hickey, and Josh Silver, they would release October Rust in 1996. World Coming Down in 1999, Life is Killing Me in 2003, and Dead Again in 2007. The band would break up in 2010 following the death of Peter Steele. He died the 14th of April 2010 of an aortic aneurysm. He was only 48 years old, and it's an unfair way to die. It's an unfair age to die, and considering at the time Steele had gone through a lot of tragedy in his personal life, and he was, I remember reading at the time, he had just not recovered, but he had kind of got a fix on things, and he had really done a lot to try and move past all of that, and to move past everything he went through, and he was in a good part of his life. To then be taken the way he did is a complete travesty. And there was never a debate for the band as to whether or not to continue. Johnny Kelly would state in an interview that even if there was someone who could take his place, it wouldn't matter. We don't have any interest in continuing. It's impossible. It hasn't even come up in any kind of discussion. When Peter died, Typo Negative died with him, which I think is a very Typo Negative response to everything that's happened. I think Peter Steele would be very happy with not just what the band did, but how Kelly worded it. And yeah, it's a tragic shame, but that's not to say that the rest of the band aren't still making music, because they absolutely are. As I said a couple of times, Sal Abruscato has played on and off with Life and Agony into 2017, and he currently fronts a pale horse named Death, which also includes Johnny Kelly. Now, Johnny Kelly, obviously Typo Negative drummer. I've lost where I am. There we are. Typo Negative drummer. He also formed Seventh Void with Kenny Hickey. Kelly and Hickey have done a lot of projects together, so this is going to get very confusing very quickly, but I'll do my best. So, Johnny Kelly formed Seventh Void with guitarist Kenny Hickey. They ended up splitting up the band in 2017, and Kelly currently plays with Danzig in his solo band. Kill Devil Hill with Rex Brown, formerly Pantera, and more recently, again with Kenny Hickey, he's formed the band Silvertune. Now, Silvertune remains Hickey's sole active project, and alongside himself and Johnny Kelly, he's also got Joseph James from Agnostic Front, Seventh Void alumni Hank Hell, and you've got the keyboardist from Empyrean called Aaron Jews. And so yeah, Kelly and Hickey have worked together a lot over the past, ever since the breakup of Typo Negative, and now they are starting to work again with Sal in his new venture. Keyboardist Josh Silver, following the dissolution of Typo, decided to pursue a career as a paramedic. So he hasn't, as far as I'm aware, he hasn't released anything new or been part of a new band since the breakup, which is, again, absolutely fair enough. If you have interest in going into Typo Negative in the same way I did, and it's a case of just finding out how good they were, if you are a fan, Typo remain one of those bands. I feel it's a disservice to say they're fans of, because I feel like if you're fans of any of the bands I'm about to list, then it's mad that you haven't already been at least aware of Typo Negative previously. But I was comparing them a lot to Danzig, and I think that's a lot of it down to the kind of vocal line, very deep, very powerful voice. A Pale Horse Named Death, which is like I said, it's a new doom metal. I guess you can call it a supergroup. It features Abruscato and now Johnny Kelly. I'm going to quickly see who else is in that band. I'm pretty sure it is like a who's who of members. That is the wrong button. Or it could be completely wrong, and I don't recognise any of his names. I'm going to be quiet. Also, you featured members of Seventh Void as well, so it's very much I guess you could call it like an in-group sort of thing. You know what I mean? So yeah, Danzig, A Pale Horse Named Death. Also, Would To Be Prez, which is another deep, very emotive, very depressing doom metal outfit. Which again, unfortunately, features a vocalist who passed away in his prime. If you've somehow glossed over Typo, I know I did, and gone into any of those other bands, I do think it'd be worth you going back to look at Bloody Kisses, because it is a just fantastic album. It's so goth as fuck. And that will leave us with this week. And it's kind of a somber note, actually. I don't like it when it ends sad. But there we go. Next week, I will definitely be looking at the new album from Soar, which is a folk metal inspired post-black metal album. Which everything I just said about Somn, in terms of if it's different, if it's good, if it's going to get lost. I'm going to see where it fits in with all of that. Also, the new album from Puppy, which I've been listening to a lot recently. And I'm not going to spoil it, but I have opinions, and they might be big, and you should probably tune in next week to listen to them. And I feel like I've already set it up. I have. I remember what the question is now. On Friday, Saturday, I think I set it up for. There'll be a next question for the big question, which will be on next week, and I can already tell you what it is now. Around about the time next week's episodes get released, we will be, I think, 2 days away, or a few days away from this year's Academy Awards, the Oscars. And Bohemian Rhapsody has got a lot of nominations, rightfully so. It was a very, very good film, very, very informative and very, very interesting. And my question that will be going out on online in a few days will be, what artist or what band, doesn't necessarily have to be in the words of alternative music, but what artist or band would you like to see get the Bohemian Rhapsody treatment? And that is a full in-depth look at a key member of the band, so most likely will be the frontman, but it can be obviously the guitarist or whatever. Also, would also give a very in-depth look at the iconic album in the same way they did Night at the Opera in Bohemian Rhapsody. And yeah, just like a general look about the life of a particular musician. So that'll be going up on, I feel like I've said it for Friday. At some point this weekend it'll be going up, and I'd love to hear what you guys think. I know I have my own opinions, but I'd like to juxtapose them with yours. So until next week, like I said, Saw, Puppy, Bohemian Rhapsody treatment, that's all coming up next week. And until then, I will see you then. Goodbye.